I'm Gemma Lonsdale, psychic medium and life coach, and you're listening to the Happy Psychic podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the Happy Psychic. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Medium Kelly Kristen, who is not only a talented psychic medium, but also a teacher, and she's joining me today to talk about how you can really develop and learn to trust in your intuition. Welcome to this week's episode of The Happy Psychic. I am your host, your guiding light, Gemma Lonsdale, and this week I am joined by Kelly Kristin, medium. Hi, Kelly. It's great to have you.
Hi, Gemma. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited.
Good. No, it's very good to have you. I'm looking forward to this. We originally met through Tony Stockwell. We were doing one of his workshops, and Tony, for anybody who isn't aware, is a really well-known British medium, and he has worked all over the world with, some amazing names within the mediumship sphere. And it's great to actually have Kelly on again. Hi.
Much. So excited.
So you are a psychic medium.
Yes.
A master teacher, a psychic detective, a healer, astrologer, a radio host. So there are quite a few feathers in your cap.
Well, you know what? And it's kind of like my fault because I just get interested. Everything interests me, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this class. And if I could, and that's all I could do, I'd be, in love with that.
Yeah, I know that's not a bad way to be, really. Not a bad way to be. So how did you actually get to this sort of work? Because this isn't something that you've done forever, was my understanding.
Right. So, I think like most of us, when I was younger, I knew I had some abilities, right? But that was, so long ago that we didn't have internet. We didn't have any way to research it besides books. The very first experience that I remember having was when my dad passed, and I was 12, and I had, a visitation dream from him. Mm-hmm. So it was the exact moment that he passed, and, he came with a message. And then when I woke up, the phone rang, and it was the hospital saying that he had just passed. So that is my first memory, but I've always felt kind of weird, when I was a kid, my imagination and what I actually thought. And then throughout my years, I kind of squashed it down, and I was always interested in stuff like astrology and things like that, but I never really practiced or learned anything like that. So I think also for most of us, when we have something like a traumatic event, right, that can jog us back into that space. And so, what was it, about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I did have something traumatic happen to me. It was, a surgery that went wrong. And for some reason, that kind of catapulted me back into this. And so since then, I've been going strong, taking all the classes.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of people I know open up through grief, through losing somebody, but it's not as often talked about whenever we open up actually through trauma and experiencing trauma in some respect. And my story was a bit similar, where I had experienced a trauma that then led me to doing the soul searching and then opening up a little bit more. I didn't come to it through grief myself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do hear people say that, but a lot of people, I don't think you're right, share that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a near-death experience, right? Sometimes it's just something that just shakes your soul. And that's kind of what it was for me. Almost like a, wake-up call.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you do a lot of teaching for people as well who want to expand on their intuition. And I know that was like the broad topic that we were set to cover today. I'm fascinated about people's intuition and how people are often saying, oh, well, I'm not gifted. I don't have any gifts. I'm like, we're all gifted in some respect. We all have the ability to tune into an energy, and we're all using it constantly anyway without even being aware. Whenever we walk into a room and think, oh gosh, you could cut this energy with a knife, you can cut the tension with a knife, or you meet somebody and you decide, yeah, their energy feels quite good or they don't feel quite good to me. And I think that we underestimate our ability to be intuitive.
Absolutely. And that's actually, I just finished Tony Stockwell's master teaching course, the year-long course. So I've been developing classes, and that's actually one of the classes I have developed that I teach quite often is, integrating intuition into your daily life, because that can be for anybody, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
even psychic medium, we all have intuition. It comes from that place of fight, flight, or freeze, back in the day, way back in the day, when we used to need that to survive, right? Well, we don't really need that anymore to survive. So a lot of us squish it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it small.
I also
So
think it's not very welcomed either. I don't think we're not, I don't know, I guess in the society that we live in today, it's not very encouraged to come to a decision and just be like, well, my intuition tells me so. We do have a tendency to want to seek answers and um evidence to back up our thoughts and a more logical approach, I guess. It's really not encouraged, even in the classroom, I think, with kids here. We're not encouraging intuition. We're encouraging logic and reason and science and not so much of the stuff that we can't really quantify.
right, that's a great point. I'm actually a former school teacher, and that just makes so much sense. We never, let the kids rely on their intuition, or if they say something that's intuitive, we shut them down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because these are the facts. This is how you're going to learn. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I find that like my daughter, she's 9, and I really tried to, since I've come to my gifts, I've really tried to encourage her along with her intuition. But I am aware that, it's just not something we value. Even in the workplace, I used to be a recruiter and a headhunter. And I can remember I used to say to my boss, this guy, he's going to get the job. This is the person, he's going to get it. And my boss would look at his like resume and just be like, no, he's not even qualified for the interview. But I was like, no, he's going to get the job. And they always did. They always did get the job. I was always right. But
Right.
it's something that, even with him, I was expected to quantify well, why do you think this? And I'm like, well, I don't think it. I just feel it. I feel it. And that was, it's quite interesting for me to look back on that in hindsight because I still hadn't recognized that I was gifted in any way. I just thought, well, I read people very well, or I'm quite intuitive. I'm good at reading between the lines. But I wouldn't have necessarily said I have a gift that I can develop further. And I think that it's that we often overlook.
Yeah, I think so as well. Um, a lot of people, I think, feel it in the workplace. And just like you said, you step into a room, you can feel the energy. There's somebody at work that you have a good feeling about, a bad feeling about.
Mm,
And it's almost like we don't trust ourselves to act on it, right? Or we want to be
mm-hmm.
people pleasers. So if we have a feeling about someone that, I don't know, they're doing something good or bad, we don't really act on it. And so
Yeah,
that is something that I think we should feel into and start working on.
yeah.
Yeah.
With the people then that you do work with, as a teacher and your role as a teacher and a psychic medium and intuitive teacher, do you tend to find that people come to you not trusting their intuition? If we're talking like beginners, brand new beginners who haven't really fully embarked on this journey yet, do you find that they're coming to you not trusting their intuition or just thinking, oh, I don't have intuition?
Actually, yeah, both, right? And I mean, I think sometimes I'm guilty of it as well. It's something that it's like a muscle. You have to build it
Yeah.
keep working at it because it doesn't always just work at the first time. For instance, like when you're in the line at the grocery store and you're in the long line and then there's a short line, and sometimes we think, oh, I'm gonna go to that line and I'm gonna get in faster, but then 5 people jump ahead of you. But
Mm-hmm.
intuition was telling you the whole time, don't move, stay in this line. right? I'm guilty of that all the time. So it's just really learning how to, I guess, trust your intuition. And
Hmm.
I also feel like, and maybe you feel the same way, when people come to you for a psychic reading, I feel like almost 95% of the time they know the answer. They're just looking for the validation.
Yeah, I actually, that is something that I find an awful lot. And it's I actually spoke to two people today as well, and I said to them, you knew the answer. You already knew the answer. You just didn't trust yourself. You didn't
Hmm.
trust the information. I said we always know. It's certainly been my experience anyway. Sometimes, yes, we will get it wrong and our ego will get involved. And I get a lot of people coming to me about like romance and, wanting some guidance on matters of the heart. And I think that, yes, our ego can definitely get involved there. If we're attached to somebody, we can sometimes be blind to the intuitive nudges that are there. We really cling to that idea of, well, we hope it's going to be something. We hope that it's going to fulfill our wishes. But actually, for the majority of us, even when we have that hope, we still have that feeling that's deep down in the pit of our stomach that's just telling us something isn't quite right. This isn't quite good enough, or this isn't quite going to go the direction that I'm hoping that it'll go. And I do find that people actually usually know the answer. They'll come back and they'll be like, you know what, I really had a feeling that this was the case. Thank you for confirming. And yeah, we do. We know when we just don't trust it. We don't trust it. You said there exactly actually about, it's a muscle that needs to be used. I think part of my struggle as I've developed my other clairs and I see and I hear, and I think that I've relied less on my intuition because I've had so much other information that then comes through from spirit. And I think that I've almost had this past few weeks, I would say I've really been revisiting my intuition, and I've noticed my guides stepping back quite a lot, just leaving me to it. And it's been surprising how often I've had an intuitive nudge come up that I haven't necessarily listened to, or I've brushed off or glossed over, that has then come to fruition. And that has really given me a bit of a nudge because it's clearly a muscle that I need to develop. It's clearly something that I need to work on a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a perfect situation, right? Because I think a lot of psychic mediums probably do the same thing. And, or, a lot of times our human brain gets in the way and we don't trust that gut feeling, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
I kind of believe I have this theory that our intuition, we can feel it in our gut, our tummy, but also, in our third eye, if we're using that part of our system to also. So I feel like it comes in two different places. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like that has something to do with when you were doing readings as far as where it comes from as well. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of
No,
my
it's really interesting though, isn't it? Because I think in order for us to develop, we have to be aware of how we actually perceive information and be aware of how things feel within us. Whenever we met somebody that was lovely, how did it feel? How did we decide that they were lovely? And the likewise, if we have met somebody that wasn't very lovely or that give us the heebie-jeebies, it's like how did we feel that? How did it feel in our body? And I think that unless we are aware of those little subtleties, it can be very difficult to really, first of all, trust what we're getting if we're not really sure exactly how we're receiving it, because it can be quite hard to distinguish between intuition and ego. I'm just going to call it ego. I don't really know what else to call it. But it can be quite difficult to distinguish between the two. But also, if we don't know how we receive that information, how it feels within our body, it just can be difficult to then recognize whenever we've got something coming in. And I think that spirit communication is so subtle that it's just hard. It's hard to pick up, especially at the start. We need to be really, really switched on in order to be picking up on all of that information. And it's just becoming more in tune with ourselves. And I think we've become, not for everybody, this won't be the case for everybody, but we come so far away from trusting our intuition. We talked about like whenever kids are going through school and they are taught not to get trust too much in that and to use more logic and reason. But we just aren't in tune with our bodies anymore. We've got so many distractions around us. The vast majority of the population don't meditate or anything like that. So it's like all of the little things that would really help us tune into our intuition. There's so many people that aren't doing those. So we become quite detached, I guess, from our spiritual self, I would say.
Right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that actually goes back to that fight, flight, or freeze, where I think, when we didn't have these distractions, when our sole purpose was to gather food, not be killed, just to survive, um,
Mm-hmm.
that intuition was probably way much stronger. Right. And then even now, I mean, there's so many distractions, not just social media, but phones. I mean, noises. We live in big cities, or even if you're in the country, there's just tons of noises. We just don't really focus on our spirituality, our spirit
Yeah.
self. Yeah.
I remember, but whenever I read the Alchemist book, I was just so fascinated by the fact that the guy, I can't even remember his name, but the guy in the book had these sheep, and he used to be able to know everything from these sheep and the weather and just everything, because he just was so in tune with his sheep and the land. And that's another thing I think that we have come away from as well. If we think back to years whenever we would have worked the land, whenever you've been talking about like hunter gatherers, if we were outdoors working the land and integrated communities and not so much like sitting on, TikTok or whatever else might be the distraction that we're focused on, the Xbox, whatever it might be, we pick up on so much when we just pay attention to what's around us and spend time within nature.
Absolutely. I think actually nature is the one of the greatest teachers, right? Just being in that space if you can. And I'm lucky I live not too far from the mountains and not too far from the beach. So, you know, um, day trips are okay. I can do that. But just taking that time, right? Do I do that? Mm, you get busy.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely something that you have to keep practicing. I don't know that you'll ever be perfect at it, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I like the idea of keep practicing.
No, I completely agree with you. Like I've, I would say that I'm the same. It's hard to make time. We do get busy. We have busy schedules. We have busy calendars. We're dropping kids off. We're doing whatever it is that we do just to keep our heads afloat. That those sorts of things are often sidelined. So my daughter got a horse for Christmas. And we haven't been able to get out riding him every day, but we do have somebody, he's used in the riding school, so he still gets plenty of exercise. But it's such a great excuse to have that. So we know that we have to go see him. We have to like go spend time with him. And the stables are all outdoors. So even if we're not riding him and we're still spending time outside, we're observing, we're getting to know the different like nuances of like the other animals and things. And it's lovely being in nature. One of my guides actually said that there's more healing in nature than what we'll ever get from medication from the doctor. That is really where we want to be. And I'm not saying that, nature is the cure all for everything, but it really helps us get in touch with our intuition, in touch with our emotions, just in touch with ourselves on a much deeper level. Even, I know a lot of people would talk about grounding and taking your shoes off and walking around barefoot, but even walking around with your shoes on, and taking a walk around a park or sitting on a bench or sitting on the grass, anything like that is always going to be beneficial for you and will help like emotions come to the surface, help you become more aware of yourself on a deeper level, which will in tune put you more in touch with your intuition.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up. It also reminds me that this is also a way people can, if they're not comfortable meditating or they don't have the time to meditate, just being out in nature is itself a form of meditation. And I also like the part about you brought up the animals because there's something about animals and intuition. I don't know what
Yeah.
I about that, but
Yeah, very much so. Like the horses, especially, I find are so in tune. And they're so incredibly in tune, much more than what we are. And I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I would sometimes give Reiki to the horse, and the horse is so much more receptive than what most humans are to that. It seems to just know. It just knows, when the energy is going through it. And so we got a dog recently as well, and it's been a great excuse actually to get us both out in nature a little bit more as well. She'll come over with us to see the horse. We might take her for a little walk while we're over there because it's set inside quite a large amount of countryside. There's loads of fields and little walks and stuff, whereas we live more in a town. But it's great just being outside. But whenever we get to know the animals more, I definitely think as well that makes us realize how much we could learn just from tuning into our intuition. It's just that being present, I think, being present and observing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And almost like that's almost how we do communicate with the animals, right? Like you were saying with the
Yeah.
horse, but also of like we just recently got a cat that showed up at our house and we kind of adopted her. But so we're trying to figure her out still, but a lot of it is like I feel like I'm trying to practice my intuition with her, like, where did you come from? What did you want? Where what can we do for you? What's your
Yeah.
personality? All these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. It's just incredible. Whenever I think it must have been about 2 years ago now. I can remember because I have a cat as well, and my cat was sitting eating his food bowl, and I seen my guide bend down to stroke him, and my cat actually turned round. My cat knew that he was there, that there was somebody there. And I don't know if the cat seen or if he felt something or if he sensed something. But my guide, I could see him bending down, stroking the cat while the cat was eating. And my cat turned around and looked at him. And I've also seen that with babies as well. I was coming out of the grocery store one day and it was the same guide that I'd seen the baby was maybe about 4 months old, 3, 4 months old. So it was very, very small. And he was in his pushchair being pushed along by his mum. And I seen my guide sort of bend down and just shake a rattle at him. And the baby turned and just looked straight on at him. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So it really makes me wonder, how much of a gift do we all have whenever we first come into this world? And then it leaves us, or we repress it, or society kicks it out of us.
Yeah, I was just going to say that going back to also the kids in school and just what you were talking about with the baby, I really feel like we are born with all these gifts and we either have it shut down, think about all the times kids say I have an imaginary friend or they'll talk about things that they wouldn't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we just tell them that's their imagination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's so interesting though about your guide. He sounds busy.
Yeah. He is busy. He's just like swept his bribe. He's not with me an awful lot now, but he does still drop in and out. So it's really nice to still connect with him. But at the start, this was, I think, part of spirit really trying to build my confidence as well with working with my clairvoyance and trusting what I say. Because a large part of this is trust. It's the same with, when we're developing any aspect of our spiritual connection, it is all about trust, and your intuition is no different. And my guide always says that your intuition should be the foundation of everything. It's where you focus on first, and then everything else will just come natural. So if you're supposed to hear spirit, it'll just open up natural. You don't need to force it. Focus on your intuition, see what you sense there, start to really trust it and use it more. And then everything else will be like, she calls it like an additional extra or like an upgrade, a 2.1, 2.2.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think intuition is definitely the base for everything. Um, and I always feel like no matter if you want to be a psychic medium or not, developing the skills can be beneficial in any atmosphere, work, relationship,
Yeah.
um, raising children, right?
Yeah,
And
that's a really good point. Actually, it's not just to use if you want to be doing readings for people. You can use it just within your own life.
Yeah. Um, and I wonder, we need more light workers for sure, right? So if people are, that's their jump into it, then great. But I feel like I do get a lot of people in my class who don't want to be psychic mediums. They just want
Mhm.
to learn about their intuition. And then for a lot of them, it jumpstarts their, journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing.
Mm. I know that this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you have any specific exercises, or is there one thing that you would recommend to people that they do in order to build their intuition if this is something that they do want to focus on a little bit more?
You know, I do kind of give like the homework of what I just explained to you about like being in the line at the checkout line
Mm-hmm.
and not thinking, just trusting and going with what you get. Or when you're driving, right? And you want to change lanes, but you're just not sure, just going with it and of course putting your blinker on, but not thinking about,
Yeah.
what you're going to do. I also put on my Facebook page like little exercises where choose the card, and that card is meant for you, oracle
Mm-hmm.
card, or what's in the box, to strengthen, just those little things, but mostly just going with your gut, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing, no matter what the situation, or stepping back from the situation. Also, like if you meet somebody for the first time, just kind of whatever pops in your head, kind of go with that and see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, I can remember I was dating a guy, and I can remember thinking something about a farm, something about a feud on a family farm. I didn't know anything about his background as far as like that was concerned at that stage. We'd only had like a couple of dates, and it turned out that there was and this was before I realized that I was really, that I had a gift. But I couldn't believe like getting my head around that. And I was thinking, like, where on earth does that information come from? And it just had come as a light bulb moment. And I think it's those sorts of things that we are very, very quick to brush off because we think,
Right.
well, no, I'm imagining that, or it's fictitious. I've just made that up. But actually, that can be a way that information comes to us and us not realize. And it
Yeah.
doesn't really feel like it's been planted there by somebody else. It just comes through as if it's on in our own thoughts.
Right. Yeah, that a lot of times that's how it works for me. And I know sometimes when I was littler, I also would kind of suppress and not trust what I was getting because I was really shy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I also wouldn't like speak up or say anything, like if I had this little nudge or something. So again, kind of being brave and just trusting yourself and just trusting yourself with your
Mm.
intuition.
Yeah.
Um,
It is a bit of a case, isn't it? Of like, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah. Well, what is the worst that can happen?
and I like thinking about it also perhaps comes from our soul, right? So if I look at it that way, it's our soul, a way for our soul to speak to us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Our higher self, I really like that as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's not my human making the decision,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
I know, and that's where I start to think as well. Whenever we do get intuition, like who is it coming from? Is it a higher self? Is it our soul? Is it still from a spirit guide? Is it from, or is it all just one and the same anyway? Does it all come from the same place? And I find it easier to just accept that actually it just all comes from the same place, regardless of whether it's an intuitive nudge, I hear something, or I'm seeing, a spirit person. I just think, okay, I'm just treating it all the same.
Yes, and that's been my line of thought lately, and it's actually given me a lot of peace. Instead of trying to figure out, where it's all coming from, just trusting the whole
Yeah,
process. It just comes
yeah.
from a place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like trusting between, some people will say, well, all psychics are, no, what is it? All mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. But I just think, is it not all the same thing? It's just a different way of receiving information. It's all really coming from the same place. I find solace in that. I find it less complicated because if I was to try and pick apart what I'm doing for somebody that is psychic, what I'm doing is mediumship, I'm not sure that I would. I don't know. I just feel like that overcomplicates things rather than just assuming, okay, it's all coming from the same place, source. You know, whether I'm speaking to a specific spirit guide or a person who has crossed over, or I'm getting an intuitive nudge, you know, it could be a different spirit guide that stood with a pitchfork. That's the vision that I'm getting now. Someone giving me like electric shocks or sticking a pitchfork in my stomach whenever I have like an intuitive nudge to get. And then I have my spirit guide on my shoulder on a little perch. So I don't know. For me, I just think it's easier to believe that it's all coming from the same place. And as you said, just trusting in the information that comes through and trying not to attach too many labels to it. I guess we love labels. My guide is always saying to me about how in human form we always have to label everything.
Yeah, and I agree with that very much, and especially as of late. I actually was a special ed teacher for part of my career, and the children would get different labels, and I'm like, why are we putting labels on them, right? The idea is to help them to learn, right? So I like the same idea about psychic mediumship. I know people like the labels, but just thinking of it as all one endeavor, that
Yeah.
actually is very freeing, I guess you could say.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely on that ship. Definitely. Oh,
Right.
well, it has been absolutely lovely having you on. How can people find you online?
Yeah, so it's really easy because all my social media is under the same thing, including my website. It's Medium Kelly Kristen and .com is my website. And
Mm-hmm.
all my social media, so Instagram, Facebook page, TikTok.
Okay.
I am
Yeah.
trying to get more TikTok followers. I have like 117,
Yeah. I
but
definitely like TikTok, I think is definitely where it's at the minute. But
yeah,
I could be proven wrong. I'm sure that there will be another social media channel that will come along. I am not exactly a social media guru. I
right,
was a bit late to the TikTok party myself.
too.
So
Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
well, honestly, it has been great having you on. Thank you so much. And in terms of what you've got coming up, because I know that you do a lot of workshops and teaching and things like that, is there anything coming up that you want to be making people aware of?
I do have a circle coming up in May. I just started one. And it is just a soul to soul circle. So
Mhm.
learning how to write from the soul, read from the soul, that kind of a thing. That starts in May. And then I'm co-teaching a workshop with Kay Reynolds in June on color. But all those
Mhm.
are on Eventbrite under
Okay.
my name, Medium Kelly Kristen.
Okay, brilliant. So people can find those on Eventbrite. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. And, I hope that all of your work, I'm sure that there'll be a lot of exciting things coming from you, including some TikToks.
Fingers crossed.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're able to, please rate the show or leave feedback on your chosen podcast player. You can also visit the podcast website. Simply head across to thehappypsychic.show, and you can also find me on the socials by searching for @Gemma Lonsdale Guru.